Road.
Welcome to today's episode, I guess. I don't know. What do we call these, Carrie? Episodes?
Yes,
Plural?
episodes, Kate.
Episodes. There we go.
You've only been doing this 200 times. I would think you would have this down by now.
I don't know. We're like, what, 205, 206? I don't know, something like that. Anyway, we're really excited. We've got a guest for y'all to kind of engage with. And Carrie and I had a chance to meet Summer, about a month ago, and maybe 2 months ago. I don't know. By the time you listen to this, it might be 2 months ago. And we were really excited because Summer brings something to the table that is kind of somewhere in between what we do and what some other programs do. And we just think she's got some great complementing programs and just great insight in for directors. And I love her background.
Yep. And, finding other people who can train at the national level as well as help people on the one-on-one small group is, I think, kind of few and far between. A lot of times those people who are presenting at the national conferences only want to do large group things with 200 people. And Summer is not like that. She wants to be able to get to know you guys. So we're excited to have her here. So Summer, why don't you introduce yourself to the person who is listening to us right now?
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me. When I saw this on my calendar today, I was like, oh, I get to hang out with Carrie and Kate. And we always have so much fun. You guys are just awesome. You bring such a breath of fresh air and personality to this childcare world. And I always just have a great time when I'm not hangry.
Yes, there is definitely a story there, and maybe we'll touch on it. But we know that, so Summer has actually, what's great is that Summer's actually done the job y'all have done. And so when you are listening to today's call, just remember that Summer's been there. So Summer,
yes.
What do I mean by you've been there? Like, tell us more.
Excellent. So I've been in the ECE field for 23 years, and I always tease this is where I insert the joke. I have the gray hair and wrinkles to prove it. I carry a Sharpie around so I can color in my grays before I get on camera. But I've been in the ECE world for 23 years. I actually started out as a dishwasher in a program.
That's a journey.
It is. And I worked my way up all the way through dishwasher, assistant, changed colleges, changed my major, got my Montessori training, became a teacher, and then eventually owned schools. And I ended up owning 3 large schools in the Twin Cities area. We had 450 students, 700 parents, 92 staff members. So it has been quite the journey. I sold the schools in February of 2020.
Little foreshadowing on your part.
I was gonna say, you guys, February 28th is the day we signed the paperwork. February 28th, 2020. Well, we know what happened 2 weeks later. We all know it. We feel it. We still have a little PTSD from it. But COVID hit the United States March 12th. And I thought I was gonna put my feet up, hang out with my mom, just kind of figure out what was coming next. Just kidding. My phone was ringing off the hook. All those people that I had talked about being part of my organization, the staff, the parents, colleagues from across the nation, everyone was in panic mode. And I was spending so much time on the phone that I realized, all right, the ECE world is not done with me yet. And I opened up a consulting company. All through COVID, I sort of did what everyone did. We did what we had to do to get through. So I was hosting parenting courses and doing staff trainings, not just for the early childhood world, but also other corporations, a Target Corporate, Medtronic, Square. We got into a couple of law firms. I'm not sure how that happened, but I got into a couple of law firms and I was training their staff. And what I realized was I really love spending time with early childhood educators and early childhood parents. That is just where my heart is. That's where I was called to be. So as things started to settle down, I opened the Conscious Classroom certification model, and it is a training certification for staff of early childhood programs. And I love it. It's so much fun.
Well, that's awesome. But I know that you've now kicked it up a notch. And so now you go above and beyond just teachers. Tell us a little bit more about how you got there. And then as we go through over the next, 15 minutes or so, we'll talk a little bit about what's in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think here's what happens. I'm going to tell you, here's what happens. Owners and a lot of times their leadership team, whether it's administrators, directors, whatever you want to call yourself, head of school. We had head of school at our program. We were fancy like that, but whatever, leadership team, they get to go to conferences and they get their buckets filled and they come back and they're just so full of ideas. And sometimes it's only the owner goes and comes back and is so excited, and we're going to read this book and we're going to implement this and we're going to change this technology and we're going to do this. And everyone who didn't get to go has that feeling of like, more work. Cool. I'm so glad you go to these things because I get to do more work when you come home. And so when I created the Conscious Classroom, it's a framework. And the framework is really saying, hey, let's get everyone on the same page. The owners, I'm so glad you're visionary and I'm so glad you're inspired. Don't stop, because if you stop, we don't have a organization. Don't stop. And how do we do this effectively so you don't burn everyone out along the way? Yep. Administrators, how do you do this sort of middle management job where you're having to manage the staff and advocate for your team and be a plumber and a bus driver and a chef and
Oh yeah.
Right?
Chief cook and bottle washer.
Right, all of it. And teachers, how do we keep you inspired? Well, you get to do what you love, which is show up for the children every single day. Parents, how do we help you join this partnership? If there's a board, how do we help you understand that we're humans working with humans? It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. So when I created my framework, it really was with the goal of getting all of those people headed in the same direction. It wasn't just, hey, I'm so glad you're inspired. Now everyone has to read 7 books and change our whole educational philosophy. It's more, hey, how do we implement tiny changes that we can sustain over a long period of time so we can all be the best of the best?
Love it. Love it.
Lots of wins.
I love wins for everybody. So
and getting everybody going in the same direction. We talk to people so much about, you need to know what your educational philosophy is so that you bring people into your program who match your educational philosophy. Because if you're a Montessorian and you're hiring somebody who was a public school kindergarten teacher, you're going to have some confusion and some people trying to go in 2 different directions if you don't get that educational philosophy part down.
Carrie, I'm dying laughing over here. So you know how we all background study our moms so we can make sure we have enough people to make ratio?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I background studied my mom, who was a public school teacher for 32 years.
Yep.
And I am a Montessorian. And after the first day of watching her work, I was like, aren't you tired? Like, you've been entertaining the whole day. Just chill and let him work for a second. And so I had to guide her along because I was like, oh my gosh, you're singing songs and you're reading books and you're dancing and you're doing this and you're doing, whew, calm it down. And so when you talk about that educational philosophy, I think that part is really incredibly important to know who you are in your core. What do you believe in? Right? What do you believe in? I know for me, my entire program was based on positive discipline, the positive discipline philosophy.
Yep.
I love it. It's who I am. I think it is just, it flows through everything I do, not just at school and then you shut it off, but it's who I am in my soul. Same with Montessori. It's who I am in my soul. And so to attract people who want to give that kind of education to the world, or to say, hey, let's coach them up, right? Because we've hired people before, and one of our core rules was we never raise our voice at the children, ever. It's just not who we are. It's not what we do. And it takes practice. It's almost like learning a whole new language. It takes some practice.
Yep.
And so when we hire people in from who worked in other organizations, you give them time to break their habits and to say, hey, this is what we do here. We hold each other accountable. Are you here for this? Or is this not going to align with who you are in your soul? And there's one specific time I remember we hired someone. She had worked at, I don't know, corporate big box place down the street. And, we did our onboarding, and we talk about this in onboarding. We talk about how we're a team and we hold each other accountable and positive discipline, and we don't raise our voice. Well, an assistant came over to her and said, we don't talk to the children like that here. And she was so mad. She came storming into the office and she was like, can you believe she said that to me? And I was like, yeah. Because we're a team and we hold each other accountable here, and we don't speak to the children that way. So if you didn't like that, take a look at what you're doing. And guess what? Still to this day, 14 years later, we're still in contact, still get the Christmas cards every year from her. She's one of the best teachers I've ever had pass through my program. And so to know, like, there's some coaching and guiding when it comes to education philosophies, but as long as people are willing to be coached, and as long as you know who you are in your soul, I really think it can work.
Absolutely.
So you said something, and I don't know if it's part of your leadership boot camp, but I think it's key. And well, actually two things, but the big one I heard is, are the people who you're hiring coachable? Are they, and what that means? So right now, where, like 30 years ago, you couldn't find a coach, right? Like business coaches didn't really exist. There were life coaches, and now we've got people with that title all over the place. But really what you're talking about is, as a director, owner, head of school, guiding, coaching, even maybe more consulting, if you were going to look at like the true definitions of those terms. What are some things that you think might be a huge help for directors if they could take one thing away from this episode of, here's a way to turn that little coach knob to help with those folks who maybe aren't quite connecting?
That's a really, really good question. And I think something I think about is, as leaders, it's our job, not only, like we said, to wear all those hats we talked about earlier, right? It's our job to wear all those hats. And it's also our job to create the culture of the program. And when we're talking about creating a space where people feel comfortable enough to be coachable, that takes time, honesty, communication. And so if there were one thing that I would be able to tell a director, it would be spend time building relationships. Spend time building relationships. I see Karen's cheering over there. She's clapping. Yes.
Yeah. So building those relationships, and you're specifically in this case talking about building those relationships with your staff. So I loved you talking about onboarding. I mean, I struggle with people who think onboarding and orientation, which may or may not even be a full day, is all they need to do. So, and that really is a whole other podcast episode. So, but I hear that you've got a leadership boot camp coming up, starting in the next week or so. Tell us what that is, who that might be for, and what nuggets they should expect to take, or shall we say work for.
Awesome.
I'm getting maybe a little suspicion that 6 weeks is not
it's laid back. I'm not gonna lie. It's It's not easy street. It is some work. So it is a 6-week leadership boot camp. We call it Conscious Leadership Camp. And over the 6 weeks, we meet. This is going to scare some people, but I promise you it's so transformational. It's amazing. We meet every single day, Monday through Friday, for a half an hour, for 20 to 30 minutes. And we have a lesson, and then there's some homework. By the end of the 6 weeks, you walk away with a 125-page workbook tailored for your program. And in week 1, we talk about mindset from a leadership perspective. I mean, and this is everything. This is, when I say mindset, I'm not just saying like, hey, you're a brand new leader and here's some mindset tips, but I'm saying, hey, you're a brand new leader and you're now the supervisor of people who were your peers. What does that relationship look like? How do you work through that? Or maybe, hey, you've been doing this job for 23 years and you're tired. What does that do for mindset? What music are you listening to on the way to work? What social media are you surrounding yourself with? And how does all of that come into play in your leadership? And so we talk about everything in mindset in that first week. Week 2, we talk about habits for success. These are things like the soft skills that we all know we're supposed to have: time management, delegation, goal setting, accountability. But how do we do that in the childcare world when you never know who's going to call in and you never know what parent email you're going to get? And I always tease them, like, if you ever get an email titled "couple things,"
it's never a couple things, and it's
never a
always going to
couple
take
things.
you half the day.
Yes, yes. So, how do we make sure we're building successful habits? Week 3, we talk about all things communication. Communication, we have formal communication, informal communication, body language, facial expressions, all of these parts of being a leader that when we get thrown into the director or even owner role, we don't know these things. We don't know. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to say everything on my face.
I have a friend who has a shirt that says, "I can't be responsible for what my face says."
Yes, that's exactly it. I've had a lot of practice. Then weeks 4, 5, and 6, we move on to more tactical stuff. So weeks 1, 2, and 3, it's a lot of just this really internal self-reflection and look at our leadership styles. And then weeks 4, 5, and 6, that's when we turn to operations, day-to-day operations, licensing operations, staff training, but not staff training as in what to say, but staff training from a brain science perspective, where it's how to create these trainings so your staff will remember them. Because we don't want to sit down for 8 hours and pound them with all of our policies and release them into the wild and then get mad because, they don't remember that they're not supposed to do that. So, yeah. So that's the leadership boot camp, and it is ideal for owners, directors, anyone on the leadership team, whether you've been doing it for 20 years or yesterday was your first day.
That was actually how'd you know it was my next question? My next question was going to say, do they have to have been in the field for a while?
No.
Awesome.
No, it really is just the comprehensive, holistic look at what the job entails to be a leader of an early childhood facility. And I always say too, even if like today we talked about vendor management, and I preface it because I could see the people who are brand new to this industry and they're like, I don't choose vendors or negotiate contracts. And I'm saying, hey, guess what? It's not your job. And in order to be good at your leadership role, you need to know it exists. You need to know that there's a document somewhere, because if your owner is out or if your director's out and your building smells like rotten eggs, you need to know what to do because you're the next person in charge. And so even if it's not your job to negotiate contracts, you have to know that it's part of the comprehensive job. And so people get a lot out of it.
So basically, it sounds to me like once you've got your credential or whatever you need to meet the state requirements. So you got everything handled from the state says I can have this job.
Yes.
And you're out of the I am panicking mode. So maybe not during the 2 weeks that you're panicking because, oh my gosh, I'm now the director of this program. But after that would be a good time for somebody
Yes.
to enroll in the class.
That would be an ideal time to enroll in the class. That absolutely would.
So Summer, tell us a little bit about where they can find out more information. We will have all of it in the show notes, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell us more.
Excellent. Well, definitely I'll get you over a link so you can throw it there. Otherwise, if you follow our Facebook page, Conscious Classroom Model, that all of the information will be on Facebook. So the Conscious
Awesome.
Classroom.
And that'll have the event and the registration link, and they'll be able to.
Yep. And it's Conscious Classroom Certification Model. Sorry, I misspoke earlier. Conscious Classroom Certification Model on Facebook.
Okay,
Awesome.
so
And
you'll
we
be
know
able to
that you
find
have
that in the doobly-doo, which is what I call it, or the show notes, which is what a
Yeah.
normal person calls it.
Well, and we also
Yeah.
know that you've got all other kinds of social media. So if you guys are looking for more information about how to connect with Summer or what else Summer does, Summer's got a YouTube channel, Pinterest, which is a great thing for like 1,000 books or something for children,
Yeah.
which is great, and all kinds of other really great tools in there. I think I said YouTube, we know Facebook, covered Pinterest. I don't know. I'm sure there's some more.
All over the place. You can find me pretty much on any social channel except, what is it, Twitter, but it's not called Twitter anymore. X or
Formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, it's like Prince when he wasn't Prince. It's the
Yeah.
social media
symbol.
formerly known as Twitter.
I'm not there. I think I have a channel, but I don't keep up with it. But everything else I keep up with.
Awesome. Well, if you guys have questions for Summer, definitely shoot them over to Summer, or you can reach out to Carrie or I at carrie@texasdirector.org or kate@texasdirector.org. We will get them to Summer. We might even bring Summer back. We love having our guests back a couple of times over the course of the year. We know that Summer's got all kinds of great workshops and opportunities and partners that she collaborates with. So definitely some other goodies we can definitely pick out of Summer. So we're really excited, Carrie.
And we don't have Montessorians on often enough. And so I think we should maybe pick at that a little bit at some future episode, because people who don't know much about Montessori have some preconceived ideas, and we should help them understand what the reality is.
Especially because I loved your statement earlier about that your mom was working too hard, and you went through the list of everything your mom was doing. And I'm thinking, and probably the majority of our ECE listeners probably are thinking, well, yeah, that's what I do all the time. And like you said, there very much isn't an entertainment value, but you can't just decide tomorrow you want to change your program to Montessori, because there's a lot of work that goes to that. So for those people who are listening that went, ooh, I don't want to work nearly as much, I want to let them work. Definitely worth picking up a phone call and having a phone call with Summer. So Carrie, what do you want to tell everybody?
I mean, just the normal stuff. Subscribe, like, share this. If you got anything of value from this episode, please share it with your friends, your neighbors, the people across the street. And we will see you or talk to you next week. So glad you spent the time with us. Thanks.